When designers create a two-dimensional image, they will need to consider how to apply the principle of movement to a non-moving picture. It is strange when you think about it. How can a non-moving picture convey movement? As a principle of two-dimensional design, movement applies to how the viewer's gaze is led through the composition. It isn't that forms in the composition actually move. Instead, it is how they are organized to create visual pathways that guide the viewer's attention from one form to another. The viewer's eyes move, not the picture. Let us imagine a simple design composed of geometric shapes. We will start with a tall rectangle and a small circle in the center of our background. As it is, this composition does not demonstrate very much movement. We see the shapes in the middle of the page surrounded by negative space on all sides. There aren't any forms near the edges of the page to encourage our gaze to travel. If we reposition these shapes differently, we can convey more movement. Let's turn the rectangle diagonally and move it over to the left of the picture plane. Now we'll move the circle and align it along this diagonal trajectory. Our gaze then travels this diagonal visual pathway. We follow the long axis of the rectangle and then arrive at the circle, which is now darker in value. We can create diagonal visual pathways by different means. This time we will work with 7 rectangles of increasing heights. The tops and bottoms of these rectangles create implied diagonal lines. Our gaze will follow these implied lines through the composition. The alignment and placement of forms is organized to create movement. Let's look at a more complicated example. We'll see that the alignment, orientation, and contrast of forms will create visual pathways through a composition. In this design of interlocking shapes, we see that many are orientated diagonally. Our gaze follows this visual pathway from the lower right to the upper left. We may also notice that there are implied ellipses in the design. An implied shape is one that is partially complete. We will now consider an example that is representational rather than abstract. Here we have a picture of a small cottage in a landscape. We see a number of long horizontally aligned shapes in the background that create a visual pathway. We also see a group of dark forms in the foreground that connect along a diagonal trajectory to another grouping of dark forms in the middle ground. These also lead us to the red cottage, which is the focal area of the composition. The viewer's gaze will move diagonally from the lower left of the picture to the right focal area.